Hello friends, and welcome to episode 195 of the Noclip Crewcast. I know, I'm sorry, the Irish guy's back. Jesse Gracia, thank you for holding down the fort for the
Happy
past
that you're
month.
back, though. It's great that you're here and we get to talk about games we already talked about last week and a new thing.
Exactly. I've literally, I have played so little games. I have interviewed about 70 people about games over the past 3 weeks, but in terms of playing games, aside from a strange fucking VR putting game, which apparently is going to come up in the emails I saw, Frank. I've not played much at all, but I really appreciate it. It was fun listening to the podcast. I'm not sure if it came up, but myself, Frank, and Ole, when we were in Korea, were listening to the two of you. We put it on the way back from filming in downtown Seoul. We put on you guys talking about your movies, you fucking sickos. So that was good. That got us home on a rainy night in Seoul, didn't it, Frank Howley?
That's right. We were actually looking to try to get into a Taco Bell in Korea.
We were.
But this Taco Bell was deep in like a bus, I almost call it like a bus airport, bus station that looked like it was from Blade
Fucking
Runner.
Cyberpunk, yeah. It was
huge. Massive. Danny took a wrong turn and actually went into where all the buses were supposed to go. And at one point, a bus was heading straight towards us.
Oh, no.
But
it wasn't a wrong turn. I was just saying, I had that feeling of, I'm not from here. If they pull me over, I'll just play dumb tourist. I was like, fuck it, let's just drive in here. And then, like a bus immediately turned the corner 40 miles an hour. And I was like, oh, fuck.
They pull you over, you're just like, Annyeong haseyo.
But I really appreciate the dedication just so I could try the novelty of Korean Taco Bell, which I eventually did at the airport.
You did.
So
how was it in the end? Was there any difference?
You know, it was good for airport food. I feel like you don't want to be like too stuffed getting on the plane, so it was nice. I do not even remember what the hell I got, but I'm happy with Korean Taco Bell.
Was it Korean tacos or was it normal Taco Bell?
No, it was straight up like a cheesy gordita crunch and like a chalupa, like the stuff you would normally get. It was like, this is awesome.
Okay, I just want to see if you got like a bulgogi tacos.
No,
fucking kimchi in your nachos Bella Grande.
No,
sounds pretty good.
Really?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yo,
Maybe
dog,
it's not the sour one.
Do you know there's like 58 billion types of kimchi? That's something I learned in Korea.
Oh, yeah. Kimchi's just a process. It's like pickling stuff. It's,
right.
Yeah.
I just was like, oh, the kimchi. And then like, oh, no. And then the fucking doors open and it's like a whole new world. Jeremy Jane, how you doing, my friend? It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm very sweaty, as the YouTube viewers might know. It's 103 degrees here yesterday. It's probably like 100 right now. It was 82 in my house when I went to bed last night at like 2 in the morning.
On October 1st.
With all the windows open in my house all day.
Obscene. I'm happy to be back in this house, although I have a sneaking suspicion a skunk might live underneath my house. 'Cause every morning I'm smelling skunk and I'm like, this is... you're used to smelling skunk when you live out in the countryside, but it's like it's pretty concentrated skunk smell. So
I've been smoking weed in your crawl space.
Oh, there you go. Oh wait, who's in here? It's Snoop Dogg. Get out! God damn it! It's all of Cypress Hill. Get out of here, you crazy ruffians. Yeah, it's been a weird month. Frank updated you somewhat on the madness in Korea. Korea feels like it was a fucking lifetime ago, doesn't it, Frank?
Yeah.
Do you have any reminiscings about Korea? Have you had any musings, any things you missed or wish you did, or God, what a weird city. So
no, the thing I shared is like the food portions in Korea were so big because we learned it with every meal you're sharing with people. So like I realized in retrospect, I was getting like poke every night. I think that poke salad bowl was meant to be for like multiple people. I was having this poke bowl, eating it like this is amazing, and I was like, oh, that's probably like that's a family size poke bowl. So like. Coming back to America, I'm like, I wake up so hungry.
I bet they have the sizes on the sticker though, where they're like Korean family, American, and single serving.
I'm imagining like the waiters are staring and they're like, he's eating it with the salad tongs. He's eating like the whole serving bowl with the tongs.
The food was very good because even in the morning we would go to like the breakfast buffet and the buffets were, I don't know, it was great. It was a lot of food, but yeah, it was good.
I think the best thing I had, we haven't even talked about, we can't really, this was a secret tape gig, so this wasn't Noclip, so this is for a for hire documentary that'll be coming out like pretty soon, actually, early December. For a pretty big game that comes out of Korea that, you know, is celebrating a 10th anniversary, let's say, in a couple of months' time. But yeah, the food was ridiculous. Like the food was delicious everywhere. The nicest thing I had was something called, I took a picture. Do you remember when we went to that mall? Remember that crazy mall that had like the One Piece store?
Yeah, AK Plaza, I think.
Yeah.
On Hongdae Street.
I was explaining to my wife about, the food I ate was called the Baku Danyaki. Is that what it is? I don't know how to fucking explain it. It was like a huge, like it almost looked like a pork bun, but I don't even know what was in it. It was like meat and potato and celery and fucking. Yeah.
It's like a big takoyaki.
Was it called like a Korean flavor bomb? Is that what it was described as?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's like become like a nighttime food when you're out drinking. I'm like 100% I would eat one of these if I was on the piss. It was absolutely incredible. The most incredible part, though, about going to that mall was we quickly realized in Seoul, the first night myself and Ole were out, we were like, oh, where do you park? Like in this city? Like there's everyone has a car. There's nowhere to park. And we quickly realized that every building has like its own private car park underneath it. Or in the case of this mall we went to, when we couldn't, there was no parking structure, and it's a huge mall, but the only thing they had was like a what do you call it when you go up to the hotel and they take your keys? A valet, right?
Yeah.
So we drove in. I was like, fuck it, we'll pay for valet. We're here in Korea. We'll do it. The valet took our keys and then drove it into, like, there was a set of 4 elevators for cars, and it just brought them up into a building. Like the cars all went up into a high-rise building where they were parked, and it was free. We just went to the mall and the guy parked our car, and then on the way out, we spent like $20. You press the button to get your car, and you put your last 4 digits of your license plate in, and it just scanned a receipt for like a fucking Korean food bomb or whatever. And then they were like, yeah, sure, it was free, whatever. And then the car comes back down. Places, it's a bazaar. It's got everything. It's got Taco Bell. It's got high rise. It's got free valet parking. What else do you need?
It's got insane Wi-Fi speeds.
Oh my
Starbucks.
God. I uploaded the dust doc in a fucking Starbucks. I finished the edit, the render. I forget what I had to fix. Oh yeah, you sent through.
I sent like a last minute VO, yeah.
So I edited that in a Starbucks because my flight arrived at 3 a.m. So I was just like waiting to get into the hotel for like 12 hours. So I was in the Starbucks in the our hotel was in a mall. Korea's weird. We had a hotel, but it was connected to a mall. And yeah, I uploaded the dust doc in like 8 minutes. Like in a Starbucks Wi-Fi, not even wired in.
You can do real business in the Starbucks in Korea, man. That's the difference.
Yeah, you could do 4K business. You can do all your.
That Starbucks is also massive. It was like the size of a food court. I don't know.
Everything it was never busy anywhere in Korea except with downtown Seoul. But like everywhere else, it was just like you'd go to what was the name? Lotti,
the supermarket.
And it was just always like empty. There was a Toys R Us in there, which was very confusing.
Yeah. The Toys R Us also sells airsoft guns, which is very cool.
Nice.
No orange tips.
Orange tips. Oh, I guess they don't have to really worry about people walking around with regular guns.
Exactly. Nobody breaks the rules there because you go to jail for like 20 years if you steal a popsicle. So, you know, it was weird driving, like the most like sort of weirdly dystopic, because it's so beautiful. And it's white and it's clean and it's very futuristic Asia looking, right? But as well, you're like, the high rises where people live, it's like, oh, I live in like block 518 in the Samsung district. It's
oh yeah,
like
a lot of Korea is Samsung and LG owned.
Yes, it's like 5, was it the 4 families or whatever? They own like, it's like 4 businesses that everything, it's like cyberpunk, right? It's so strange.
It's like in the future, Samsung will have to go to war with like Toshiba, you know what I mean? Yeah. And all the people from their different blocks will be recruited into their PMCs to fight.
Who will you fight for?
That'd be a really good like Metal Gear spin-off. It's like the TV wars, all the people that manufacture refrigerators in the future, smart fridges. They have to recruit their denizens.
And if you're shit, you end up, fighting for Kobe or something. One of those like knockoff brands. I'm in the 101st Yamaha division.
Ridiculous.
Then we were in Poland, which people can guess. I guess at this stage, we're not going to edit that thing until next year anyway. So keep your ears peeled, eyes peeled for that little guy. And then Sweden after that as well. We didn't do a podcast in Sweden, have we? Because Jesse, you were out last week, right?
Yeah, nope.
So no, there wasn't one. So Frank, what'd you make of Sweden? What'd you take of Sweden? Korean food versus Swedish food. Go.
You know what? I will say in Sweden, I don't think I really had much Swedish food, although we had something called a skandwich, which was an open sandwich, but that was very, very good. But I had so much like other types of food there. I had like two different Thai places. I had this place we went to was amazing ramen. Again, all these places I went to, I just ate so much food, but it was so good. I hadn't been to Europe in like 20 years, so it was so cool to be in the city we were in, Sweden. It was so walkable. It was amazing. Like,
yeah, Stockholm's crazy.
I went to 3 different bookstores. There was even there was this place called, I'm not going to even try to say the name, but the Science Fiction Bookstore, which was like half yeah, it was half manga, and above like the Studio Ghibli section is just a hanging xenomorph, and it was like, damn, this place is incredible. And I even texted Jeremy. I found that 80s like shit art hentai.
Hentai.
Oh, did you?
Heda Uma, yeah. It's called Pits of Hell, but it was like the kind of books that Jeremy was talking about. It's like they carried it, so they had really good selection. But yeah,
I think you missed the video game section in there. It was up because it's a really big shop as well. Mm-hmm. It was at the back. They had a really great selection of video game books in English and a couple of them in Swedish too. Yeah, it was crazy. It was so easy to get around Stockholm. We were there for the best part of a week. I think we walked to the studio every day. It's another Secret Tape gig, so you'll hear about that one. It's going to be a series. It's a game that's not out yet, so we got to be in there and ask questions about making games when people don't know the answers yet. We played a lot of the game, recorded a lot of gameplay footage of it, and yeah, I feel like that's its own crazy project to dive into. But yeah, it was cool. It was I went on a Swedish video game podcast as well, which was good fun. Thankfully, they did it in English. It was the first time they'd done the show in English, so I wasn't just standing there like a fucking tool. Because like Swedish stuff is just like, it's not, you go to France, you can kind of guess a lot of, like 20% of English is French, right? So it's like it's not that hard to figure it out. But Swedish is just like, I don't know what the fuck anything is. How did you find that whole thing, Frank? Because like I found Sweden and Korea to be almost identical in terms of I don't know where anything is.
Yeah, it was. I will say, I feel like Korea was a little bit more difficult because there was way less English signage, whereas in Sweden, I feel like.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I mean, everything was still whatever alphabet, like A, B, it looked normal, but the words, everything's rearranged. But I feel like everyone in Sweden spoke English, and it was very easy. Whereas like Korea, a lot of people spoke English too, but I think Ule told us like everyone in Sweden from the age of like 7 to 14, they were required to learn English. So it was like great. It was so it was pretty easy to navigate. Again, Google Translate over the last month, whether it was Japan, Korea, became like I was always having it out to translate stuff, and like by the end I just got very comfortable doing it. And like I feel like when I would first start using Google Translate, I'd be, I don't know, self-conscious or just like just not as used to it. Whereas by the end, I'm going up everywhere, holding my phone up to places.
The hardest part was when we were in the studio in Korea where we were filming. They made us put stickers on our phones. Now we're walking in with like thousands of dollars worth of camera equipment, but our phone cameras had to be covered up, which meant that you couldn't use Google Translate on anything because your phone was,
like,
you couldn't.
I would get like nervous trying to find bathrooms at these studios.
That's what I was going to say. You're waiting outside the bathroom for someone to come out.
Yeah. No, I didn't know. Well, whatever.
We couldn't get out of that. Do you remember? Yes. I couldn't get out of that fucking bathroom.
No, I didn't know.
Ole was the one who
Wait, what do you mean you couldn't get out of it? What?
I couldn't get out of the bathroom.
That doesn't.
I couldn't either.
What do you mean?
Because we had like badges for opening some doors, and then other ones you pushed.
Oh.
But then this one, I guess, was, I only realized on the last day, this was you don't press the button. You just wave your hand in front of it. And that's what opens it. But me and Frank separately could not get out of this bathroom.
Okay.
And let me tell you, when you are a English speaker in a country where no one else in the studio is speaking English. All our interviews were in Korean as well. And you are locked in a bathroom. And this is like you are locked in the public bathroom in the studio. Like this is not like you're locked in a stall. You're locked in like somebody will walk in and you're desperately waving your hand in front of this fucking door. Panic stations. Not a great social situation to be in.
Oh, that'd be a tragic way to die, is if the building caught on fire when you were in the bathroom and you just couldn't figure out the interface for the bathroom door to leave.
And it keeps like beeping at you and using like an AI Korean voice to tell you that you're doing something wrong. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
We couldn't use Google Maps in Korea because they don't let companies hold data on Korea outside of Korea. So you have to use one of their ones. So I was on Naver Maps, which was the one of the two big family tech companies it's like Naver's like the Google, and then another one's like the Amazon or whatever, or Uber or whatever. Like I think Naver also has an Uber thing, right? Like their own taxis and stuff. But so you'd have to punch shit in, but like you'd have to put it in Korean, and then when you're driving down the street, like you're driving on the highway, and it says like, oh, there's going to be like a speed camera in like 500 yards, and everyone's speeding, and then the entire road, because everyone uses this shit and they all know where the speed cameras are, and the speed cameras are in the same place and they don't move, the whole road will just drop 20 kilometers an hour and just drive slowly past the speed camera and then go, and then the car, like in the car, goes ding dong, like you pass the speed camera, everyone fucking speeds up again. It was so bizarre. It would do it for like speed bumps, fucking everything.
It was constantly going off. I don't know if you turned it off by the end, because eventually I saw, or we just got.
I think it just stopped doing it. I don't know what happened.
But
after a while, it stopped bothering.
My favorite thing, I think we noticed it on the way to the airport, but there was a scarecrow. They have scarecrow policemen on the roads. Like there's a scarecrow policeman that's just like a cop guard with like the not baton,
it's like a mannequin.
The Billy
yeah,
Club,
but it's
or-
like just warning, like, hey, we're watching.
Wow.
But it was not a real cop. It was a scarecrow. It was amazing. Oh, and then my favorite, I said this,
Scarecop.
I can't remember if I said this or not, but my favorite detail is every single day, every morning, we get a siren alert on our phone that was warning us that North Korea was sending trash balloons to us.
Not trash. Not trash, Frank. What type of trash are we talking about?
Well, it's like feces and other
Human
other-
trash.
Yeah,
Okay.
human trash. But it'd always be like, North Korea's sending their trash balloons again. If you find one, report it to your local district. Like it's like not like it's a nuisance at that point. It felt like lunchroom cafeteria food fight
It
stuff.
felt like propaganda. And by the
Yes.
end, I was like, if twice a day I get a fucking message from the Korean government telling me to watch, and we're like 100 miles from the border, so like like poop balloons. Like, is this really a threat to national security that I need to be told about?
They need to make they need to bring John Belushi back from the dead to make like an Animal House style like warring fraternities movie about North and South Korea doing low level pranks on each other like that.
Yeah, it seemed ridiculous, and the response from the Korean, fucking mobile phone people was just like, yeah, let's like wake these fuckers up at 5 a.m. and let them know that, it was like the alarm. Like every time it happened, I thought, because I live in California, I thought there was either an earthquake happening or a child has been kidnapped. Like, but it was like, no, poop balloons. Every single time.
Fun.
Astounding.
Yeah. Very bizarre place. Glad to have spent time there. Thanks to everyone who said hi, by the way. There was a couple of, bizarrely, we did have some Noclip fans we met in Korea. And also in Poland and also in Sweden. So thank you very much for all the folks who's come up and said, hey, in the studios and outside the studios. I spent last week in Ireland. So I literally was out of the country for 31 days. So it's good to be back and talking about video games, and especially to all of our incredible Battle Pass holders. Eamon Slattery, Harry Flanagan, Battle Royale Games, Arno, Richard Matherson, James Brown, Mark Rojas, Ryan Cobb, Tucker Morgan, David McGarry, Sven Huster, Pez, Ewint Nate, Tim Robinson, Forrest Pruitt, Jonathan Kremen, Eric Hamilton Schneider, Cameron Lett, Zachary Snader, Alex Sharp, Alex Goucher, George Dakotas, Jacob Godserve, Tohir Tiliev, and Ryson. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. Let's talk about some goddamn video games. Bizarrely, the game on the tip of everyone's tongue, presumably because they've just brushed their teeth, is Mouthwashing. I knew nothing about this game until Jesse tweeted about it last night, and I went sight unseen, fuck it. I'm going to download this game. And I think I'm on the last scene.
Okay.
I tried to complete it before the pod, but I just couldn't squeeze it out. This game is fucking great. Jeremy has also played it. Who wants to take up Mouthwashing? Because it ain't me. Who wants to explain what this game is?
Jesse, you want to do it?
Sure, why not? Yeah, Mouthwashing is a first-person horror game, psychological thriller kind of thing. It's not the sort of, it's funny because it opens in a way where it feels like it's going to be sort of a mascot horror, and then it very quickly is like, haha, no, get ready for something different. So this is like a horror game designed for people who want to just like watch a really good movie but wish they could play it. It kind of feels like an Ari Aster film in a lot of ways. There's lots of really interesting visual design, and a lot of it is like gameplay wise very straightforward. It's walking through this spaceship. You play as a freighter working for the Pony Express, which is a very funny name for it. And there's this mascot who's a horse. And every time you walk up to it in the lounge, it like says a little inspirational worker motivation quote. A lot of the game is sort of mocking the worker motivation corporate structure stuff. But then the horror part of it is, and you see it as soon as you turn the game on, the title screen, is there's this guy in a medical bed wrapped up in bandages. He looks like whoever from MGS5.
Yeah, I was about to say, he looks like the fucking fake promotional guy as well. Do you remember when Kojima dressed up and put the bandages around his own face? Yeah, or whoever it is at the start of 5, I forget, or Ground Zeroes, I forget who that is. Yeah,
I can't remember. But yeah, it's basically just a horror game, very straightforward. It's not like Resident Evil puzzles. The puzzles are very straightforward, I feel like, anyway. There's not too much like it's a lot more about the atmosphere and the vibe and like seeing what's going on. I'm trying to speak vaguely because there's like a lot of really cool shit that you need to see for the first time. It's super short. It's like 2.5, 3 hours long maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering how long it was. Yeah, to me, initially I was like, so it's first person, you're walking around this ship, you're interacting with the other small set of characters that are sort of in the world, and then there's some like sort of regiment or relatively basic interacting with the ship / a very limited inventory. But like the game takes place over a series of like interconnected vignettes, which are bled together with like this very interesting cut data mosh like effect thing. There's just a lot of like, the game is constantly like, in terms of pacing, I love how they've basically solved like this issue with narrative games, which is like, fuck, we have to connect all these like really important scenes with like other shit that you do, and they're just like, no, that's the end, bang, on to the next. And it always feels like they've cut out at the right time, and you're like I just can't put this thing down. Like it's just constantly like giving me more intrigue into this sort of like ship drama, which is, you know, part sort of Signalis style tech horror, part the psychics or the psychopaths are stuck in the room together, and who trusts who kind of thing, interpersonal stuff and you know, elements of survival too. And it's another, like Signalis and like Homebody as well, that we talked about last year's, it has that just, it does the PlayStation 2 fucking dithering thing like so good. Like the art style of this thing is just gorgeous, and the art direction I think is actually even better.
Yeah, there's some crazy post-processing stuff going on here with the dithering and the data mosh transitions you talked about. I swear to God, it happens in the game like 25 times, and every single time I thought my computer was breaking. And it got me every time because it does this kind of like boo 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 boo, and then it data moshes your whole screen. And but it's interesting because it's like, it's instead of just because it is a hard problem. Like, how do you have these sort of, you know, short to medium length bottle scenes in a bottle environment? How do you cut between them, especially in a nonlinear story where it's like 20 days after this thing, 24 days, it's 6 months before this, 2 months after that, and it's like going all over the place. How do you like crossfade kind of unceremoniously, do hard cut, and then just do a title card? And they've found like an absurd amount of ways to transition elegantly between these things by doing the data moshing stuff, by doing very sort of like surreal, dreamlike breaks from reality. I don't know. I found this game incredibly affecting. I thought the writing was also fantastic. I think that there's so much that rides on the quality of writing in a game like this, especially because it's like, This isn't like a survival horror game where you run into Eddie in Silent Hill 2 and then you go for 2 hours like shooting nurses or whatever or hitting them with a lead pipe. This is mostly just sort of like interpersonal horror. It is interacting with the other few crew members on the ship and kind of like learning about their narrative and the story that they're trapped in nonlinear fashion. So there is a lot of pressure on the quality of the writing, and not only like the quality of the writing in terms of dialogue and like the scenario crafting, but the characters in this game, I thought were really, really strong. They sometimes like, I don't know. There's this thing this game does well, which is like, I feel like good horror is often tied up in comedy. Like, I think there's a push and pull between scaring the shit out of you and then pulling back and doing something like a little silly or a little weird. Even the Silent Hill games do this. I to this day, I don't know, having played so many Silent Hill games, I don't know how intentional the comedy is in Silent Hill games. But they make me laugh a lot because it'll be like a really serious moment, and then James Sunderland will look at Eddie and be like, "How could you eat pizza at a time like this?" it's that shit's funny, you know.
I think Jordan Peele was said it as well in an interview recently. He was talking about something along those lines of like, yeah, horror is it's like a form of comedy. Or
Junji Ito talked about that a lot too. It's
right.
Yeah, it's like it's like peekaboo with kids, you know what I mean? Like it is this like primal human emotion that it's like surprise is this superpositioned emotion between horror and comedy. And I feel like this game has this madcap sense of humor where it's not afraid to scare the shit out of you and then do something really, really silly. And it makes it feel very multifaceted and human and multidimensional, and not just jump scare, bloody face, jump scare. It's like it has humanity to it, and it does a lot of things very well.
Yeah, the revelations in the story, the non-linear aspect of it, but also like in terms of like the media it uses, because like, you know, you're always playing this game in first person, but there's elements where it's very linear, like you're almost playing through a sort of scripted sequence. There's parts where it takes control away from you. There's parts where you're having to do, quite a lot, like, constructing something out of different parts that are in your inventory and things like that. And it mixes it all up in a really interesting way. I was also, one of the things, because I was like playing this thing, like I was trying to finish, like it had the fucking antidote in it. I was just like going through it because I was like, oh, I want to make sure I complete this by tomorrow. I was also taken aback by one element that I thought, this is a little bit in the weeds maybe for people who haven't played it, but the design of the ship means that you never get stuck down the wrong hallway. It took me a while to realize that both exits from the sort of main top area basically go to the same place. So if you start in one area, you always know that generally if you have to go do a thing, it's probably over there, and you can take either route and it'll kind of always get you there, which I thought was really smart, because a lot, in a game where, and I think the few times in this game where it forces you to do something in particular are sometimes there's a little bit of, there's a stealth sequence in this game, and there's another combat sequence, which I think are maybe some of the elements where the game feels a little bit more gamey in a way that the rest of it feels very fluid. Jesse, actually, I saw you mention something last night on Twitter that there was one like 2-minute segment that you said was the part that
the things you're mentioning are the parts.
Is it?
It's funny because this game's like I said, it's 3 hours long. It's so short. It's so tightly designed. Like everything about it from moment to moment is so, like, you never spend more than a minute not doing something interesting, I feel like. And even when you're not doing something interesting, it almost becomes interesting because it's devoid of like so much. Like there's moments where it'll just be quiet for a little while and you're like, oh shit, this isn't boring. This is like, I'm waiting for the thing to happen. I'm like anticipating the fear, which I think comes from the thrill. But to your point, yeah, it's funny because it's 3 hours long. Like I don't know if you needed those bits. I don't know. Like I didn't really leave either of them feeling like I need, like, oh man, the game's elevated by that. I think it's fine. Like, it's not terrible. And one of them's really funny. If you make a mistake 10 times in a row, you get an achievement, which I think is a kind of funny, almost funny, poking the player. Like, hey, this sucks, doesn't it? Like, so I think that stuff, but it doesn't detract from it. Like it's maybe, I think like 10 minutes total I spent doing things I didn't enjoy in a 3 hour long experience. How many other games can I say that about?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even some of my favorite games of all time, I'm spending like if I were to actually break it down, I'd probably start weeping. I could feel the Reaper on my shoulder. Like, hey, you spent 6 hours driving between locations. If somebody checked on my time it took me to finish Skyrim of walking across the whole thing on a horse and never fast traveling, I think I would just give up on everything. But no, to what both you guys are saying, I think Mouthwashing is one of those games where it's like, this is what horror is about to me. Like, I don't like jump scare horror. I got over that when I was a kid. This game, like I said at the start, very quickly gets that out of the way and is like, hey, here's a little bit of that. Okay, forget about that for like the next 3 hours. This is a thriller. This is a game where you're afraid of nothing. A bump in the dark, a light going off is going to terrify you. Text on the screen is going to scare you, maybe more than anything else in the game.
All the supers, all that stuff is...
It's the sort of thing where you wonder what we're doing with the mascot horror stuff. I get it, like Freddy Fazbear. I'm not, going to disparage anybody from making a game that clearly is successful and makes a ton of money. But there are so many moments in Mouthwashing that are gonna, like, visually that I can see in my head still. And I can't say that about games quite often. Like, I played it yesterday, obviously, but like, there's so many shots that I think I'll probably be thinking about for a really long time. I don't know how
design
long,
is
but
doing a lot of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also,
visually,
also the sound design too, right? Because there's 2 or 3 moments in this game where literally the hairs were standing on the back. Yes. Like, I was freaked the fuck out.
Are you talking
I was
about
like, there's a couple of them, right? Yeah, and it's like, oh, you're fucking, and it's some of it's the visuals for sure, because with that dithering stuff, anything in the distance is immediately you're squinting at it, and I think they do a really good job of that when it comes to like hallways that are long and how it's lit and all that sort of shit. But also just like, some of the sound design with the cuts and with those scary moments. Like there's one part it was bringing up a lot. Like I can't wait to finish it so I can really have like a sit down think about what the game felt like to me. But like stuff like maybe this is me playing a game having just been on the road for 4 weeks and having lots of really different experiences and having not played many games, but like there was parts of this game which really reminded me of when one of my parents was very, very sick a couple of years ago and I was minding them and how traumatic that whole thing was. There was parts that were talking to me about like the panacea of alcohol. And it's so well written that all this stuff just like feels very genuine and earned and made me feel that way. And there was one part, like I was thinking about this, I was like, it was making me sort of reminisce about, like, I'm not a writer, like a fiction writer, I don't have that skill, I don't understand how people do it, but there was one part, the scariest part in this game to me was there was one part where one of the characters is basically moaning in pain and you're walking around the ship trying to get something and you can hear him and you can't sleep because he's doing that. And that reminded me of something very particular in my life, of a moment where I felt that, and it was like dread sank into my fucking chest. It was so affecting. It was so smart, and it was intentional and earned. Like that's what they were going for.
Yeah, I think to what you're saying, I think this game does a lot of things where I feel like a lot of the most effective horror takes a very normal, grounded human experience and it's trying to abstract that into a horror scenario, but not in a way where the game is being like, hey, this is just like that thing that happens in real life, huh? Like it masks it just enough that you feel your way into that, and you kind of like, it allows you to put 2 and 2 together and kind of connect in your head the way it connects to real life experiences. It's not going over the top and being like, hey, this is just like that thing that happens to real people. And I felt like Mouthwashing a lot of the time was doing things like that, where there were just moments that felt very organically, moments that emerged very organically out of the story that felt very human and relatable. Even though, I'll never be stuck on a space freighter in the depths of space. Hopefully. I mean, I don't want to speak too soon, but
well, I mean, have you ever been stuck in a break room with a bunch of people you don't like, or perhaps stuck in a bathroom you can't escape because you don't know how the button works to let
in
you
Korea,
out?
Yeah.
In Korea, perhaps.
I think we've all had experiences like that. But yeah, I really loved this game.
Me too.
Chelsea was talking about it for a while because she played the demo, and she plays like every single horror game that comes out, and it was one of the ones that she hyped up to me, and I went in knowing absolutely nothing other than the fact that I was probably going to like this game. So yeah, if any of what we're saying sounds appealing to you, just don't look up anything. Just go buy this game and just sit down for 2 hours and play it.
I think this has also established a new publisher in my top publishers that now I need to check out.
They're so
everything.
good.
So Critical Reflex, and this is great because I basically played this and I was like, I need to know if this is the same developer as Arctic Eggs because like
Almost.
right. So it's the same. It's the publisher. So I don't know. This could be a situation like New Blood, right? Where for the longest time they were a publisher, but it was basically a sort of a pool of people that was sort of working on a bunch of these games. So maybe the developer name is one thing, but maybe they actually had some help from that person who did that. I have no idea. But between that, they also published Buckshot Roulette, which is another game that I've really enjoyed playing, which has that similar feeling. Again, that sort of, that's not quite PS2 aesthetic, but it's sort of like, early aughts PC aesthetic, sort of like the Inscription vibe we were talking about a couple of months ago. Like the three of those games are games that sit somewhere in my fucking lizard brain. Like they are so affecting and interesting. So I don't know if that's everything. It looks, just checking out their Steam page, Critical Reflex seem to publish games that also do not look like that. But I found it very funny that those three. Which one?
Lunacid.
I've never played that.
Oh,
it's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. It's like a King's
Same
Field
developer as
game.
Basilisk 2000, which we talked about recently.
Oh shit, that's
yes,
right. You were
of
saying,
course.
yeah.
They're also publishing Threshold, which looks very good. Another kind of dither punk. I don't know what you want to call it. PS1 horror.
That's great.
Yeah, something like
Big
that.
fan of that. Fuck, man. Yeah. What a cool little thing. Look, they've one here as well called Orcs, which I've never played, or X, which looks like a little fucking isometric, like a shit. Can't remember the name of the game. The mechs time.
Oh, Into the
Breach.
Into the Breach. Like, see, in no other company could I say mechs time, and you guys immediately would go. It's Into the Breach.
They're also publishing Tanuki Pond Summer, which is the game that got a trailer recently from Liam, who did Curse to Golf.
Oh shit.
Oh, terrific! Excellent.
Yeah.
That's great. That game is awesome too. Yeah, they're doing
Yeah, for
Threshold.
sure.
You're right. Yeah. Iron
Hell
Hive.
yeah! What was the game they're working on now?
Tanuki Ponds Summer, PON
Excellent.
apostrophe S.
That game looks
Hell yeah.
so cute.
It does look very cute.
yeah.
Very different than Curse. I mean, Curse of Golf is cute, but very different vibe than this. This
A
just
BMX
looks like
Tanuki? Come on.
this looks like Tony Hawk meets Boku no Natsu Asobi.
Yeah, it literally does. That's perfect.
That's fantastic. Liam Edwards, ex GameSpot UK intern as well. I always like to mention because he's clearly gone on to much greater things than the work. Not to disparage any of my good friends at GameSpot UK or myself, but Liam has obviously gone on to work in dev, and that's super cool to see. Speaking of Boku, did you see with fucking Tim Rogers?
No.
What?
He got his like shit broken into, didn't he, Frank? It
was like a month ago
Yeah.
or so where Tim Rogers parked his car briefly to get lunch, and in like the 5 minutes he went to grab food, someone broke his back window, stole his camera, which had a week's worth of filming, and I think laptop. And so
5 minutes. That's like 4 minutes 95 seconds. 4 minutes. Base 60, baby. Forgot about it for a hot second there. In Korea they use base 10 times.
Oh, okay. All right. That explains it.
Yeah.
That explains it. All right.
Yeah, he's just too worldly to remember.
I was trying to be smart ass and say that's about 4 minutes 55 seconds longer than you want to leave a bag in your car in Oakland.
Yeah,
But,
that's how you get bipped. That's what they call it.
Me and Jeremy can both speak to having things stolen in Oakland, although Jeremy's is definitely more tragic. Yeah, so I felt bad for Tim. Yeah, hopefully
That sucks, man.
Yeah.
I think we heard the news like while we were in Korea. It's like as we are traveling with camera gear, and I'm like, oh, that's my biggest anxiety. Like I was like just telling everyone, but my mom is traveling internationally by herself, and I'm like so nervous for her. So I was like, Mom, be careful, mind your stuff. So it's just like it is like gut wrenching to hear. But I do think Tim Rogers is starting like a patron exclusive podcast on his thing to try to get more people to jump back on. So again, I think everyone here has been very open about how much we love Action Button and all the phenomenal work Tim Rogers does. And so it was devastating to hear, but it sounds like still powering forward. I think he even posted in a blog saying like it's not going to impede the production too much. It's still a bummer, but he's still working on this magnum opus of whatever the next thing will be.
And I guess just while we're speaking about our favorite YouTubers having to go through tragedies, did you guys see what happened with LGR?
Yeah, it's brutal, man. Like obviously everything around the hurricane has been really sad to see, but
Yeah,
having
I didn't
some connection of
realize
seeing that is like brutal just to imagine all the stuff that was lost in that.
I know that's it. It's so depressing and sad that that's where you go immediately. But of course, that's where you're like, is everyone safe? First of all, and thankfully they are. But LGR, Lazy Game Reviews on YouTube, like one of the best channels when it comes to just like, yo, here's an old ass game. We're gonna just do the whole history of this, and we're gonna give you the most beautiful. Look, we like box shots, B-roll around these parts, right? But LGR takes it to a whole fucking new level. They do, they'll open up the manual, take a look at everything, the sleeve, the whole shebang. Tragically, LGR is based in Asheville, North Carolina, and his home that had all of that stuff in it some trees landed on it. His basement got flooded, which apparently was where the collection is. So apparently everyone's okay, but it seems likely that major damage has happened to his collection. I feel that's just like, very easy to empathize with somebody in that situation. Feels very close to home. Absolutely gutted for him. Also just like really happy that he spent the past few years documenting all those boxes, because like ultimately the work was done, you know what I mean, like in a way, like that was his collection, but in terms of preserving those games and preserving the history of and the memory of them, like that YouTube channel, Flooding, can't touch any of that shit, you know what I mean, like that's there. So trying to keep positive about it, at least that's where my brain went with it. But I think I'm sure when the time comes, if and when he needs any help, the internet will answer the call, because that channel and his work is really, really cool. So yeah, very sad to hear about that as well. We have apparently more UFO 50 to talk about, because of course there's 50 games and we all have to slowly chip away at it. Before we do that, Frank, Dead Rising, you were talking about it before.
Oh, yeah.
I played a bunch of it it was the first game I played when I came home. I was like, all right, let's crack into this shit. Let's remember when the Xbox was good. How have you enjoyed the ending, finishing Dead Rising? What do you make of the changes to the format now that you've completed it?
I beat the game and I was like, wow, I beat that pretty fast. I'm very surprised. The thing that is such a lifesaver is the game has autosave.
Yes.
Later in the game, the special forces come, and these are dudes with like machine guns and rocket launchers, and they will just I died so many times, but it was never an issue because like, oh, just reload your save. I can't remember what the hell that must have been like 15 years ago. Oh my God. Cause like it was like dying in like Last of Us or Dark Souls or whatever. Just like, all right, just reload back, whatever. So it was a blast. And again, with the accelerated XP gain, I think I finished the game at like level 46.
Dude, it's ridiculous. I'm like, in a way, it's making me take photographs now. Like in the first game, I took them for fun, sure, but like you get like 3 or 4 decent photographs, like with some of those perks in them, and like you shoot up a level. Like it's especially at the start, you're just milking that shit. Like I took one good photograph and it gave me a level and a half.
It's awesome. Like, I think I said this last week too, but it's like, that's why I love like a remaster or a remake should be, where it's like, you've played the original. There's a good chance. All right, let's just make it a little bit easier or sweeter. And if you've never played it, this is awesome, because like, man, Dead Rising 1 and 2 are so good, and 3 and 4 are not. That it's like, if anyone's interested, like, well, where should I start? Oh my God, boom, right here. And I really like Dead Rising 2, so I hope Dead Rising 2 Remastered is next. Also, it'd be fun to play co-op. But yeah, now Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster is like the perfect thing. And again, on that engine, it's so good, it's so fun. Again, even like the later half, just using all the guns and stuff is very fun. So yeah, I loved it. I'm tempted to, there's like the infinity mode and there's extra achievements to get, but it was like, oh my God, like, that's it. I'm kind of done with the game. I could do the savior thing, which is rescue all 50 survivors and things like that.
Can you do that for real? Like, how do you do that in the opening scene when they burst through the...
So those are not meant to be saved. Okay. There's a list and you can go through it. And again, like there's the autosave that makes stuff easier. But yeah, there's like a list of survivors you can, and then you don't have to worry about. But I don't think I'll ever... I don't know. There's too much other stuff to play. But yeah.
Oh, I was feeling a lot of emotions playing it, because there's that Luddite fucking trend, right, when you're about to hit 40, where you're like, man, games used to be good. But I was thinking, like, even when this game came out, this felt really out there for Capcom. Like, it just seemed like such a weird It is such a weird game because it's got very much one hand in Western pop media, but then like even more so than this deluxe remaster, like the original one was so esoteric when it came to like how the time worked and all that sort of, like they've definitely rounded the edges on some of that in this remaster in a way that I think sort of benefits it. So it always was a little bit weird and eccentric and cool, but also had a budget behind it and was interesting. So it's never it's not like a sort of an example of what all games were like back then on the early Xbox 360 stuff, but it is like so interesting and novel and single player focused in a way that AAA games, a lot of them tend not to be. I mean, Capcom still does a bunch of this stuff with Monster Hunter, of course, but yeah, there's just something so it's the sandbox nature of it. I think every game was becoming more of an RPG. We sort of talk about that a lot, but Dead Rising was such a sandbox. It was such a silly, like, if you want, you can just go get, fucking buckets and stick them on everyone's head and take a picture of all these fuckers with the buckets and get comedy points for it. You realize that like, oh, I have to kill zombie cops to get their pistols so I can do very specific, or I have to, push around, once you get the crafting and making all that like mad shit and all the doors that opens. It's such a, it's both it both marries the sort of the very structured linear single player of a traditional single player game of that era with also like an almost at that time sort of Minecraft level of just do what the fuck you want, because they're like, look, this is the time, this is the mission, that's where it is, you're in a mall, get there wherever the fuck you want, we're not going to tell you how to kill anyone, we're not going to tell you anything, just like go do it. And it's such a, like, I still don't know another game that's like it. Like, it's so bizarre and weird, and I fucking absolutely adore it. So I don't know. I've been enjoying the minute all those like the music in that game is like immediately brings me back to like whatever 15, 20 years ago. Like the fucking, like hearing the little theme in the back of my head now when you're like taking photographs and shit. It's like, oh man. It's such a good time. That and the fact that you can dress Frank up as Ashley from Resident Evil 4 is absolutely fucking brilliant. I am a big fan of that. There's also, did you get that pack with all the fucking yeah. Dude, what's your favorite one? Because they're so ridiculous.
So I played it basically as all the Resident Evil characters. So I played as Chris Redfield for half of it. I switched to Leon. At one point I switched to, I think his name is Adon, the samurai guy from Street Fighter Alpha, which looked really cool. And every time you change costume, it changes the music. So when you play as like Chris or Leon, it plays like the save room theme in the mall.
Oh, that's
cool. And when you play a Street Fighter character, just play Street Fighter music. Like it's again, like the game itself already has tons of fan service. Like
there's a liquor, isn't there? Is there a liquor costume?
Yeah, and it has a giant tongue
a big
out.
tongue.
It's all, yeah. It's
wait, there's a Tron Bon costume as well.
Yes.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Who is
Is there a
Tron
Mega Man
Bon? I
costume?
saw that.
She's the Mega Man boss lady from like Mega Man Legends. She's the one who makes all the little serve bots.
And you're you're in the cutscene and it cuts to Frank dressed up as like the fucking like Mr. X or something.
There's even a skin that's like 2006 Frank West. So it's a little bit like rounded and shiny, like
His
the 360 graphics. Yeah, and which is like that's genius.
The leather doesn't pop
Yeah.
quite as much. Yeah. It's fuck. What a silly little game. I'm very all I hope is that this means that they'll bring it back and do it like that first game, because like Dead Rising 2 was also a great game. Dead Rising 3, I think they had to evolve it. I totally get it. They couldn't just make another one of those. But to me, Dead Rising 3 doesn't work because of like a lot of reasons. There's a feel to that game which doesn't feels more like a regular Western shooter at that stage. I don't know if that's when it started getting made in America. I'm not quite sure, but there's just something so special and weird about those original games, and I'm glad they were able to retain it with this one and sort of increase it as well with all those silly costumes. UFO 50 open session. Who wants to talk about UFO 50? What UFO 50?
Can I talk about Chameleon?
Yeah,
dude, because this game, oh my god. I've been playing them in chronological order, the UFO 50 games. I stopped at like 15. I was like, I beat Bushido Ball. I got my golden disc or whatever the hell. I'm excited. My floppy is gold. But then I was like, what's the next one, right? Let's see. And I'm locked in right now with this problem with UFO 50 where I want to try all the games, but I start playing a game and I'm like, this is the greatest game ever made. And then I start the next one and I'm like, this is the greatest game ever made. I don't think there's any bad games in UFO, even the ones I don't really like. I'm like, someone's going to love this. But this one, Chameleon, which is like a color-coded... it's not like a platformer. It's like just a maze game where you play as a chameleon and you have to change your color to match blocks because there are little frogs and other creatures on the map that have a vision cone that goes like straight along the map, and they can see you. And if they see you and you're the wrong color on a tile, you're gone. They come and eat you. So you have to like plan out your route and make sure you're the right color. And just the way that they design the routes, the way that the mechanic works, of just like capturing the color and you have to be standing on it, is so smart. It's the kind of thing, again, I think I've said this multiple times with Bug Hunter and with Velgris and everything. You could just make a game out of this and sell it for $10, and I'm playing it for 50 cents in this combo with 49 other games that are that good. Chameleon I cherry disced it, man. I had to 100% that shit. It is. I wish there was like 10 more hours of Chameleon, and there's not. It makes me very upset.
Yeah, did you play that one, Jeremy? This is the problem with UFO 50. It's like I haven't fucking touched this shit. So
I played a little bit of it. I have not golded it. I've got like 15 golden cherry discs, so I've been making pretty good progress on them. Nice. But yeah, not played a lot of that one. I finally got the gold disc on Bug Hunter last night.
Yeah,
Bug Hunter is like, it's so fucking good, and it's like, there's a little bit of RNG, but it always feels like you're one move away from the perfect round, and then you get fucked over by just like...
That's the best roguelike, is when
there's just an egg like in the corner that you can't reach, and there's like not enough energy, and then the blue guys turn the energy blue, and you can't blow them up. It's just fucking... I was like addicted to it. The one that really got me recently was Caramel. It's a shmup, or like a I don't know what the different shmup categories are. It's like the side scroller one, not like the top down one. But you're like a little ship flying around and shooting kind of different like food themed enemies, kind of like Kirby games. It is so short and so fucking frenetic that like the whole game probably takes 20 minutes to beat, but it's it just like, I'm not good at those games, and it just consumed me. The last few runs I was like, I don't even want to beat this. I like have to beat this to move on with my fucking life. I get very fiendy with games that have a high difficulty and sort of a short loop where like you can a short loop between play, fail, start over, play the whole thing.
Did you
again.
play Super Hexagon?
No, that name rings a bell though.
It's the Kavanagh game. It's he made VVVVV as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, super. That's what comes to mind when you say that.
Okay, cool.
It's ridiculous, so good. One of the things I really like about UFO 50 is the sort of fun categorization they do in that menu, where it's like, oh, these ones are like ones you can play pretty quick. These ones are like thinkers. Like these are, which I really like, because I think so much of especially that era of games it was hard to tell graphically whether something was complex or whether it was very surface level. And for some of these games, you know, especially when you're looking at that, you got that choice paralysis screen and you're trying to figure out which one to do. Like, I love that you've picked chronological. Like, to me, that makes complete sense, because I feel like when you get to that menu, you have to adapt a strategy, regardless of what it is. You can't, you know, I feel like only psychopaths just go random and pick whatever one they want. It's like, there has to be some fucking order to this thing, or maybe the order is I will pick them randomly, but I will always complete them, or I will always, you know, play them as much as I can until I get stuck or whatever it is. And yeah, it's half the joy I found in this is seeing how deep each game is, or if they're just, you know, a more what you see is what you get kind of thing.
I feel like that is a lot of the joy about old games in general that they've really captured here, is that you can fire up like any game in UFO 50 and play for 5 minutes and be like, oh yeah, that was fucking hard. Like, I got my ass kicked. And then as you put like maybe an hour into it or something, it starts to give way, and you start to see the gaps through which you could succeed. And it like, I don't know. It's sort of the joy of hard games to me in general, is that it's very easy to play them for a second and be like, well, how could anyone ever fucking beat this? And then you sort of, Sisyphus your brain against the wall for a few hours, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm so close to like breaking through on this. It's just a very satisfying and addictive loop to just kind of like to figure out how a game is beatable, or to like build a relationship to it and feel yourself grow from someone who's like, how this is impossible, into like, I got this. This is like within reach now.
Yeah, I feel like the big reason why when I play old games I fall off them very quickly is because I guess there's two. One is that like games back then were difficult in a more sort of cheap way a lot of the times, because they were just, you're trying to get X amount of hours out of you, and these games were linear and short, and so they just had to get really fucking hard sometimes. Which is a big part of it. And then second is that when games like that are difficult, I feel like modern games are so much more about like things are difficult, but like you very rarely hit a linear roadblock that you have to get past. You can go do something else, or you can whatever. There's ways in which modern games soothe that element, and because you can just back out and play another game, I think it allows them as designers the ability to sort of retain some of those hard roadblocks and like make it challenging, while also trusting that like you won't just quit the game and not boot it up again. Like you can just go do something else for a while and then maybe come back. So it's a very smart thing. I wonder if people are going to keep talking about it, 2, 3, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, how hot it's been or anything. Do you guys have any sense? Because I know we it's been weeks of covering it here on the podcast, but do you guys have any sense of, are people in your circles playing it? Do you think I wonder what the Steam reviews are like.
We're only getting finalized hour runs for people. Like we're only just now seeing how long it takes to get a gold disc on all of them, and it's like 150 something hours, 100 plus hours to go in blind and figure them out without using guides and stuff. So people are going to be talking about this for a really long time. We haven't even broken, like we mentioned it briefly on the pod last week, the like barrier of there's clearly something else going on here behind the scenes. Yeah, right. So we don't know what that is yet. I haven't seen any conversation around it, so we're going to wait to see that, and then whatever that produces will keep the conversation going. I think people will be talking about UFO 50, not just like in terms of the games, but in terms of like its impact on the fact that it exists at all. The fact that like people were joking about making a good version of Action 52, and then we got this 8 years later is like insane. And then game of the year for this year, we joked about it. How many games are we allowed to put on the list?
Or are you allowed, or do you have to just put UFO 50 in here and
have its own GOTY list?
A sub list of like the top 10 UFO 50 games. That would actually be fun to do a category.
Yeah. That it's also like it creates like an interesting philosophical problem with game reviewing as well, where you're like, if there's one bad game on here, does it drag down the score? Is that what video game reviews are? That's a tricky one. Conversation for another day.
There's an interesting element of it as well, which is that Danny, you kind of alluded to this with being like you can bounce off of these games and go to the other games, but there's sort of like a different sort of like metatextual element to that is like not even the ARG stuff, just having all these games in a collection. It gives them like, it imbues them with a different feeling that they are all part of a collection. I think if these 50 games all came out on Steam and they were each 50 cents, like if the equivalent price was exactly the same and you bought all 50 of these games, it would feel very differently to have them all in your Steam library as kind of like disparate pieces of media that were, you could have the same experience where you're like, yeah, I'm bouncing off Campanella 2. Let me go play Block Koala. You could, it sounds like I'm just making up words.
It 100% sounds like you're making up games.
Like fake games. They're real Block games Koala. On the fucking collection, I promise. But
isn't it great how you can also, the freedom to make game names when you don't have to use them as marketing materials.
Yeah, it's a really good.
What a beautiful thing.
That's very, very true. But yeah, there's something special about having like a meta layer in which all of these games are in the same place. It's kind of like people who are into emulation sometimes will build like really not only just have like a list of the titles of games, but they'll like get the key art for the games, and they'll have like big like key art tiles on the thing. So it's like there's an aesthetic experience to selecting the game. And it's kind of like having all the games on your shelf and like picking them out and having like a tactile physical experience of picking them. There's something about the framing of UFO 50 aesthetically, but also like I don't know. I won't get into the ARG stuff. I did get super deep into it, and it's really interesting. But the idea that there is a fictional studio that made all of these games, and they're like, they fell off, and you're like, why they made all these great games? Like, why they stopped making games in '89 or whatever? There's an interesting, like metafiction element to it that is really interesting. Kind of like Basilisk 2000, where there's like a fictional developer behind it.
I still have to play that. I heard it in a podcast when I was in Korea, so I gotta, it's been a while.
It's really cool. It won't take you very long to explore, and you probably won't find anything. It's one of those games you'll fuck around with for a while and then start Googling stuff about it and be like, cool. I need to fire it up again.
Hey, if you want to hear one of the developers of UFO 50 and the publisher talk about his philosophy as it pertains to mystery in video games, then rewind Noclip back 7 years and you can check out our documentary on rediscovering mystery and our documentary on Spelunky 1, of course, as well. UFO 50, we'll be back next week with more UFO 50. Rounding out the games, Marvel vs. Capcom Collection, Frank has down here.
Yes.
What the fuck? Is this a new thing? What are you?
No,
this
is new. This is Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics. This got announced. I don't know if this was at Summer. It might have been at Summer Games Fest, but this year, and everyone freaked out because finally, every 10 years they'll re-release it. But finally, again, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is officially playable in a collection with online lobbies and trophies.
You don't have to buy a 1-Up arcade from GameStop to play it. Let's go.
Was that the only way you could do it? Did that have the online?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Some of them do.
Yeah.
So I wonder.
Oh yeah. Well, so like the release of Marvel vs. Capcom has always been like frustrating because like for the longest time, like the best way to play it outside of arcade is like the Dreamcast was the Capcom like fighting game console. Because like X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, all these games came out on PlayStation, but super janky ports. Like you could only have 2 different characters at a time, so both teams had to have the same characters. Like, anyways, so this collection has a handful of games. It is like the whole saga of these games, starting with X-Men, Children of the Atom, Marvel Superheroes, and then X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And as a little bonus Marvel treat, the Punisher beat 'em up game. So
that's the one I've seen footage of, and I'm like, what the fuck? It's like Streets of Rage, but he just has a gun and shoots people.
It's insane. It's like the most violent video game that Capcom made. It's like Capcom's Narc. There's no blood, but it's amazing. It's really fun, and like, I don't think it's ever been ported. I think there's like a crappy Genesis port. I can't recall, but like, played it in an arcade in Circus Las Vegas back in like 1995.
Wow, dude, that is the roughest hotel in Vegas. That is fair play.
So I remember playing it. Anyway, so it's back, it's out, it's cool. So I play that online with a friend, online co-op, and it kicks ass. But the whole collection's great. But again, really, just having Marvel vs. Capcom 2 playable is amazing. It is not crossplay, so you need to have your friends have to have both PlayStation version. It's on Switch or Steam. No Xbox port, although I think they said they'll eventually put it on Xbox.
Okay.
These games, we talked last week about like formative games. These were my games in the arcade. Like every time this game would be in arcade, whether it was starting back with X-Men vs. Street Fighter up to MVC2, my dad would drop me off at the arcade with like $10 worth of quarters, and I'd be there for hours.
Drop you off at Circus in Las Vegas.
Oh, because my dad was doing my dad was doing other stuff in Vegas.
I'm barred from all the other casinos. I gotta go to Circus.
Because I would be able to like 1 credit clear all these games. So like for 25 cents, I could be there for 30 minutes. Just like it was the best.
Okay. Well, then on that note, UFO 50, $24.99, 50 games. This thing costs $50, Frank.
That's the Marvel tax. That was the thing where I was like, God damn it. No, really, because like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is always the most requested thing because of Disney and all this crap. This has been released on PS2 and Xbox, but no, like that's not online. Those copies went huge. For like a brief window, they released Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on Xbox 360 and PS3, and then those got delisted. And they have
really?
Yeah, those were delisted games. I had the 360 one, and that was great. And then they delisted it. And like,
wait, did you own it on 360? But then surely you could still get it.
No, like the PlayStation, like the store. It was never a physical. Even the physical edition contained a download code, so it was only digital. So,
but even if you bought it, you couldn't get access to it?
no, so you could download it, but new people can't play it. And
Okay.
and I don't know if online servers were taken down. And also, like,
right.
now you could emulate these games, and like certainly in recent years, Fightcade works great, whatever. But it's like I just want to just play it on my thing.
It's too inconvenient to play multiplayer that way.
Yeah, it's a hassle. But this is amazing. This collection's great. Again, $50 sucks, but it's like, do you want to play Marvel vs. Capcom 2?
That's worth it just to hear the MVC2 character select theme. I'll take you for a ride. Like that's worth $50 right there. I'd do that.
It's great. And yeah, online code works. This game has also like there's micro achievements. So like every game has its own, like there's the straight up trophy list, achievement list, but each game has its own like achievement list. So it's like, if you want to just have little things to do inside, there's so much to do and play. And it's been really fun going through and just playing all these games again and seeing the evolution. I never really played X-Men Children of the Atom or Marvel Superheroes. Those are the games that Capcom basically took like Street Fighter Alpha and slotted Marvel characters in, and just seeing the evolution of the series. Like, so this is awesome. I'm always a fan when Capcom puts these out. They did like the Street Fighter 30th year anniversary collection like 5 years ago. They did like another fighting game collection with all the Darkstalkers. Forthcoming after this will be like another arcade collection with like Capcom vs. SNK and Power Stone collection coming soon. So I always like, funny enough, I think Nintendo did a takedown on like a Switch emulator. So it's like, I appreciate when companies will be like, okay, you want to play these games? Here's the official way. Buy it. So I'm happy. Hopefully they don't delist this. Please don't take this away. So yeah, I recommend it. It's awesome. $50 is a lot. I get it. But it's like, if you want to play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 officially, that I think if it's worth it. You probably already have it. But
hey, look,
it's awesome.
It's either worth it or it makes that emulated version that much more appealing. So either way, you should be happy. There you go. Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. All right, that's all the new games for this week. Mouthwashing, UFO 50, Dead Rising, and Marvel vs. Capcom Collection. Capcom getting a lot of action this week. On to emails. Frank, you got some correspondence for us?
Yes, thank you everyone for writing us in. If you want to send emails, podcast@noclip.video or in our Discord, the podcast chat channel. This one's for Danny from Matt Scat. Hey, Noclip crew, I saw Danny tweet the other day about how all he's been playing lately on his trip is the phenomenal VR game Walkabout Mini Golf. Though Danny already answered this on Twitter, your podcast audience hasn't heard it. What's your favorite Walkabout course? Also, have you tried the multiplayer? It's a joy. I play almost weekly with my friend in BC, provinces away from me. They go on to say that mainstream gaming coverage of VR is often not great. So they would just love to hear Danny talk about Walkabout Mini Golf.
Walkabout Mini Golf is fucking my sickness. Bury me with Walkabout Mini Golf. Can I say one thing about Walkabout Mini Golf? If you want to be good at regular mini golf, do not play this fucking game. I was played with my nieces and my family in Dublin last week, and because in Walkabout Mini Golf, you're playing a VR golfing game, the end of the putter doesn't penetrate through the ground, obviously, because that would be a nightmare. It's always at the ground. I kept hitting the ground or hitting the top of the ball, and I have played pitch and putt, like par 3 golf, and putting and stuff like my entire life, and my putting game went to complete dog shit. So caveat emptor, folks. Walkabout Mini Golf, I think it's on everything. It came out in 2021. It's just like a mini golf game, but the courses are fantastic. The loop is great. They have like mini games within the levels. Each course that you get has a hard mode as well, which is basically an entirely new version of, the layout's the same, but the holes are all different. Some of them have weird, you can collect extra balls by finding them. Some of them have weird, mini game, other, almost ARG type quests in them. They now have, because it's been out a while, they have a store where you can buy other courses, and I have been gobbling them up like a sicko. I've just been buying I will what they have a Meow Wolf one that I played a bunch of. They have a bunch of like ones of, I'm just looking through them here, like Ice Slayer, Venice, Shangri-La, Jim Henson.
What?
There's
Jim
a Wallison,
Henson?
there's a
Like you
Fraggle
play
Rock
on
one.
Jim Henson? Oh, Fraggle Rock. Okay, all right.
Yeah, there's a fucking there's one that's just like a bunch of ancient fake places like Atlantis and the Gardens of Babylon. There's one with Wallace and Gromit. It's just, and all the stuff is great. It's like, I just can't stop playing this fucking game. When I was on the road, it was basically like, because I brought the Quest 3 I have here, which will come up in an upcoming episode of Dear Dwyery. I was like, should I bring it? I was like, it's gonna take up a lot of space. Do I need to bring this fucking thing? But it's like it's inside out tracking, so it's just the headset and the two things. And every day after editing, I would in a hotel room in Korea or Poland or Sweden, I would just pop this thing on and play like 2 rounds of golf, and it was just like
Frank comes back in from lunch, and you're just like standing there virtually, like, what is he doing? Oh, he's playing golf. Sorry.
get in the hole.
Yeah. Whoa.
Get in the
Hey,
hole.
hold on now.
Exactly. Yeah, so shout out to Walkabout Mini Golf. It's very good. If you have a VR headset, go play that game. It's great. I've not done multiplayer yet. I bet it's a lot of fun multiplayer, but no, it's my solo sickness for now.
And then Eric Hessen writes in, says, "Hi all, I work as a math teacher, and a big passion project of mine over the past few years has been writing JavaScript programs that generate math problems for students to practice with. They're not quite games, but I've seen how just adding a score counter and some interactive elements can really help to increase students' engagement. So this made me think a lot about the intersection of education and entertainment. The early edutainment era had its sporadic hits like Oregon Trail and Carmen Sandiego, but it seems like the genre was so flooded with cheap software that got a bad reputation, and I can't think of any more recent games that take the concept further. Do you think there's much value in the development of educational games? Can they be successful enough to justify the effort and investment? Do you have any ideas for academic subjects or concepts that could lend themselves to an interactive, immersive experience? I feel like this is an area with a lot of untapped potential, but also a very hard thing to do right, and I can see why games may have moved away from it."
I mean, I would have grown up at the end of the era of people playing those games, like period. You only played them in class. On your computer for that. Like that's how I played Math Blaster. There was this crossroad trucking game that I think took place in Canada, which is why we got to play it. You learn how to get to Nunavut if you ever decide to become a trucker. So stuff like that.
Here's where you dump the prostitutes' bodies.
That's a different version from the one we were playing.
Sorry, truckers.
Jesus. Yeah, so like I don't know if there's,
and also sorry, prostitutes. Sorry, I should say that.
Sex workers,
and
Canada. There's in Canada. There's a lot of people to apologize to. It's
sorry, Mom.
The games don't.
Sorry, I'm not implying my mother is a sex worker.
What is going on over there? You go in the corner, Danny. You go over there.
Not that any of those things are wrong. I'm just gonna go over here now.
Jesus. All right. Yeah, I don't know if educational games quite have a market anymore. You're competing, like if that was the only time I was playing them and I liked video games and I was willing to play those, now you're competing with kids who just have games on their phone and like they're not going to play Math Blaster. They're just going to talk the whole time. Teachers aren't bothering with that. Maybe there's a world where it works. I think the approach is probably just make a good game that also happens to educate people. Like Zachtronics games are probably the best way, in my opinion, to learn programming if you're not interested in sitting down for a class, because you're not going to learn. You might if you play TIS 100 or something, but if you sit down and play like there's one about building factories. It's not called Factorio. It's a different game. Where it's like you learn the ideas of creating structures, of making loops. Like you learn the basic sort of core Lego, like the Duplo blocks, not even the Lego blocks, of making a program. That's, I think, a really great way to introduce people to programming. It's for whatever you want to do. If you just make a great game that's also educational by proxy or tertiarily or whatever the hell, like that's, I think, the way to go forward. Not making something that's exclusively played to learn how to write or read or whatever. Like that's,
yeah,
we don't need that anymore.
I totally agree. I think the blueprint for the future of educational software is Pentiment. I think games
that's so true. Holy shit.
Games that are not educational games but are educational because they're embedded in a real world grounded situation, because they're well researched and because they're made by people who are passionate about that historical research. I think that's the way forward. Yeah, because I learned a lot from, as someone who is like interested in history and has read a lot about that stuff anyway on my own and in college and stuff. I still learned a shit ton from Pentiment, and it also having the optional glossary feature, like the lookup feature for different stuff in Pentiment, I think is a really good way of doing it, because you can play Pentiment like you're playing Baldur's Gate, like people don't play Baldur's Gate and they're like, now I have a PhD in the history of Baldur's Gate. But you can,
don't.
yeah, but you can immerse yourself. It's kind of like a la carte. You can engage with it on a level where, medieval Europe might as well be wherever Baldur's Gate takes place. I should really learn the name of the world if I keep wanting to reference Baldur's Gate. But yeah, regardless, make games that are like inviting people to be curious about the world because they are interesting on their own right, not games where it's like checking off the checklist of homework points.
You know how much stuff I know from playing Civilization and like actually being interested in like the Ottoman Empire? I didn't know dick. I was like, is that like the thing you put your feet on? And then I find, classic joke, hit the snare. And I was like, there's like a Bismarck thing going on. I know words now. It's great. Learned about macroeconomics from playing Europa Universalis. Like obviously that's a game that you play because you're just interested in playing that kind of game. But anything like that, Jeremy, you're totally right. That like if you just make something that has bits and pieces and is appealing on its own, people are going to, if 1% of people who play your game leave and Google something successfully and read a Wikipedia page even, I feel like you've made something that's fun and educational. You can do two things at once.
I think you're somewhat, I would agree with that, but I think pragmatically that's exactly the reason why this stuff doesn't happen, because ultimately every piece of software that's created costs money. And when the, focus of it is to educate people, then the design of whatever that thing is going to be very, very different to we're trying to make a mass market product that we can sell to lots of folks. And also I kind of would argue that as much as like, I agree that Pentiment is a really good example of like how to sort of less so like how to get people to learn about stuff, but definitely how to, increase wonder, like a sense of genuine interest in something. I think that's a really good gateway drug for that. It is super inefficient in comparison to like a book. Like it doesn't get, like, you're never really going to learn about history from the game, or like macroeconomics, for instance. Like I studied economics for years, and like when you play one of those games, you get a surface level of what that thing is, but you're not actually learning about the theory. You're not actually learning, the like, things are complicated and deep. And I think games are really good, or can be really good at like in getting you interested in something like that. Like even like, I feel like how many people around the world have played an Assassin's Creed game and learned something about a place or a piece of history, but you're still only learning this sort of like this like crust of it. You're not getting down into the detail on it. So yeah.
Well, that's the point of it though. Like that's the, I think what even Jeremy's saying with Pentiment. Like I think it's better for people to know the 1% and keep going. Like if you just know a little bit and you're interested, that's great. Maybe you played an experience that you enjoyed and then you got a tiny little bit of information. It may not be the whole picture, but it's more than you knew before you started playing. And I think for an educator, that's really your goal, is to have someone leave a conversation with you, a thing that you've created for them, and know anything more than you did when you walked in.
Unfortunately, as an educator, your actual goal is to make sure that all the people in the room understand the stuff that's on the test.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying.
Well,
in a society in which we were all like sort of self-motivated to learn, and ultimately learning didn't matter, I think that would be fantastic. But given that, like, if this person works in education, it's like the amount of work required to make something that not only is entertaining but also introduces the deep level of knowledge required, I think is just, there's no sort of pragmatic market for it, sadly. The games that I think that have done it right, aside from obviously Frog Fractions and Typing of the Dead, which are the two best edutainment games of all time, is, do you remember that brain training shit on DS? Like, I felt like that was like that, and Sudoku and stuff were like, Brain Age, Dr. Kawashima. Is that another? Does he exist? Is that another?
I'm pretty sure there was a real person, that they based the programs on, like the way of learning.
Like, I think Mavis Beacon. It wasn't.
I would not be surprised if it's the basic Mavis Beacon situation, but I feel like that's a real person.
Okay, he's real. Ryota Kawashima. Yeah.
Okay,
he does not have like the polygons in real life though. He's a real.
That's a shame. I totally agree. I think that I guess that's why I would say Pentiment is like the blueprint for it and not the solution, is because I think in order to get into depth, like, Pentiment would have to be about a real historical event and create interactive, like you would be, there is a lot of information in Pentiment, but it is more like supplementary material. I don't think you could have a curriculum where Pentiment was the teaching lesson. It would more be like, like if I was a teacher and I was teaching about medieval Europe and Pentiment had some intersection, like if I was teaching about Martin Luther or something, I might be like, you should check this game out. It would be fun and interesting, but that wouldn't be the be all end all for teaching it. Right. However, I do think that there is a world in which you could make like CRPGs about real historical events that are more educational, but they don't have the stink on them of like educational software. But yeah, I mean, it is definitely a tricky problem. I think the more straightforward answer is what you said, Danny, which is like gamification of learning, which the person who wrote in also mentioned this, that like, solve a math problem, get a point. It's very, I remember playing The Sims as a kid and being like, if I had a meter that told me how much fitness I was gaining when I lifted weights, I would lift weights way more. And I mean, over the last couple decades since then, there's been a lot of gamification of fitness, of learning. My Duolingo, Fitbit.
In my multimedia class, my first year, we had a project that was like, if you could invent something, like what would it, blah, blah, blah. Mine was a gamified treadmill.
Oh, nice.
And then, but whoever invented the fucking, whatever one that one's called, the bike one, what's the bike one called? Peloton, everyone's into. Yeah, it was right there. It was like so obvious. Because it was around the time that like achievements in the consoles was happening, right? It was like this gamification of the process of playing games, weirdly. Like, or GameSpot had all their emblem shit on it as well. I feel like, there's some stuff like Jesse was making a good point about like it does introduce concepts to you that maybe no one's going to pick up an economics book, right? But like, sure, if you're playing this game, it's cracking open that seal, and maybe that is the hardest part of it. The one area I think that the games, like, you can educate with games some stuff that just doesn't have a lot of depth, and I think sports is kind of that, where like, I mean, sports has depth, but in terms of the rules of sports, they're relatively, surface level, and I feel like a lot of sports I have learned the rules from video games, like from the video game equivalent.
I learned hockey. Well,
right.
The bit of it that I know anyway, which is hilarious. I'm Canadian. It's like the one sport we have. I think that's a good point too, that the lower depth, the easier it is to actually teach something. I don't know if there's a way to do. Maybe there is. Who knows? You guys are right. Like, maybe there is a world where you can make a game that does directly become an educational tool. But I think, it's got to be like the Brain Age example that you had, or like, what's the Duolingo for history? What does that look like, right? How do you figure out how to do that sort of thing?
Here's a one-to-one one. I learned poker from Poker Night at the Inventory.
Oh, okay. Cool. I mean, I learned poker from Bolitro.
Right, yeah.
He keeps bringing his own jokers to the casino, though. Like, he's throwing them out.
This one gives me double money. Also,
actually,
all my singles are really good. Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed all these jokers I have on the table, but actually, like, this round goes to me.
I'd never come back to Circus again.
Yeah, Circus is actually the only place they let you do that.
Yeah.
Great question though. It is very, very interesting, and I think the bottom line is it's a very difficult problem to solve. Games are very good at getting people interested in topics, but getting them educated on them is a more sticky, tricky situation.
I'm not doing homework. I want to shoot things.
Got to mask the homework.
Yeah. Numbers go up. All right,
Frank Howley.
That's it.
No
more questions? All right, that was it. Sorry. Okay, that was it. Thanks, Eric, for the question. Thanks, Matt, for the question. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Noclip Updates. I don't fucking know. I just got back from a month on the road, dude. Go watch the Dust Stock. Go watch our old Spelunky, Rediscovering Mystery. We're working on a bunch of stuff. I forget what we've announced. I know Dwarf Fortress is coming in the pipeline. We've no, can't talk about the thing Jeremy's working on. Oh, we announced the Soul Reaver thing.
Yeah, we can talk about one of them.
We announced the Soul Reaver. We'll have a Soul Reaver doc coming out late November. We have been sneaky fuckers and been talking to the folks at Crystal Dynamics. That was a fun one. That was a fun embargo, Jeremy, to watch the hard. Internet scream for a Soul Reaver remaster for the best part of a year. So yeah, it's been cool putting that thing together. They gave us access. This is implied in the trailer, but we didn't say it outright. But they have given us access to a massive treasure trove of recently redigitized assets, which they went through the cost and time of basically digitizing. It includes everything from voiceover DAT tapes from actors who were not in the final games to behind the scenes videos to renders and gameplay of the game before launch. I'm still working my way through it, trying to get all the best bits out of it. Jeremy's doing a bunch of editing work on a bunch of interviews we've done with people who worked on the game. We haven't been able to get Amy Hennig. Let me just say it outright. This is the third project I've tried to get some interview time with her on, but she's super busy. We'll keep trying, but just want to. That's one of the big questions people have been asking. But yeah, a bunch of other folks who worked on the original two Soul Reaver games. Other people within the industry who are fans of Soul Reaver. We also talked to some of the folks who were involved in the fan community who have basically been keeping the heartbeat going for Raziel for the past 15, 20 years. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. And we're basically making a documentary much like the Half-Life one we did ages ago on Noclip, where it was about the sort of legacy of Half-Life. This is similarly going to be about the history of Soul Reaver 1 and 2, the fans who kept it alive, and ultimately what this remake and its commercial success might mean. Like, this is sort of the moment whether or not people want a new Soul Reaver game or not. We'll sort of explicitly say it in the doc that, at least from my perspective, this remaster that they're putting out is the, you know, video game equivalent of putting your toe in the water, I think, and seeing what interest is out there. So that's sort of the idea of the doc, is to talk about this moment in time and whether or not we'll see more Soul Reaver stuff in the future. So
yeah, that's a really interesting element of the doc. I've been working on it a bunch over the last month or so. Is them talking about, like, just because a franchise is iconic or historically significant does not necessarily mean that there is an appetite for a modern or like a contemporary revivification of it. So it's interesting. The example that one of our interviewees gives is that at some point the 60s or 70s television show The Mod Squad was like dug up out of the IP library by some fucking corporate entity. They were like, yeah, let's just bring it. Like, we have it. Let's bring it back. And just no one gave a shit because it's like, who the fuck cares about the Mod Squad? So there's a very interesting discussion that I feel like none of our docs have gotten into before, which is, like, how not only that, but also like the difference in sort of like the climate of the games industry back then versus now, and how like making the original Soul Reaver games, Crystal was very small. They were in like a weird ski chalet building when they were making them. Small team, very young team as well. I thought like it's. I feel like this is one of the most in-depth docs that we've done that gets into the sort of changing nature of team sizes ballooning up and budgets ballooning up, and how that changes the way in which you make games.
Totally.
And is it like there is something kind of like punk rock about how Soul Reaver 1 and 2 were made, and as that goes up, it's a blessing and a curse. There's a line where he says that as they moved into PS2, one of the 3D artists ran around the studio yelling like, "We got more polygons! Like, there's more polygons!" So it's like, you see the excitement as those things grow, but then it's also, as it becomes bloated, it's like, can you make a Soul Reaver game with, you know, hundreds of people, huge budgets, huge AAA expectations?
Totally. It's like a different world that you have to release that game in, and how do you budget that, and all that stuff. So it's really cool. I think people are gonna, you know, I'm not gonna stand here and say that like we know everything that's going on over at Crystal Dynamics and their plans for this stuff and X, Y, and Z, but definitely the angle that we're taking is very much that. It's like that's the questions we went in with, which were like, how feasible is this stuff? You know, what's the mentality behind this? And we also have some very interesting insight into the development of that remaster as well, which, you know, I think the thing about remaster, you never know how they're going to turn out, because sometimes, you know, for all there's been the Tomb Raider one they put out last year with that same studio as well, was really well received earlier this year, I think it might have been actually, or maybe it was last year. It's all blurring together. Whereas, like, say, the Republic Commando one that came out a couple of years ago, which was largely lambasted, it's really tricky. And there's some really interesting crossover between the fan community and that game, that project too, as well, which we get into, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's should be a fun one.
One other thing I wanted to mention is that I wanted to talk about this on the podcast like 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't talk about it because we hadn't announced the Soul Reaver doc. I captured a little bit of Blood Omen 2. And it's interesting because the FromSoft games come up in the documentary from someone who worked on Soul Reaver 2, saying that, like, you know, even if there is not necessarily a huge appetite for specifically Soul Reaver, it could thrive in a world where people could be made receptive to it, because there are sort of modern equivalents. And like FromSoft has become so successful, and a lot of the gameplay, the tone, the kind of like gothic horror stuff of the original Soul Reaver games and Blood Omen, it is like present in that FromSoft vibe. It is kind of like a like parallel, similar kind of feel to it. And when I was playing Blood Omen 2, when you fire up Blood Omen 2, there is an option for simple blocking or like advanced blocking. I can't remember what it is, but it's the fucking Sekiro thing. It's you hit block when the enemy starts the animation. You can't hold block. And so I played the first like 45 minutes of Blood Omen 2, and I was like, oh, this is sick. This is like the Sekiro blocking system in whatever 2002.
Games, Jeremy. I don't know
what. No, I know, dude.
I'm gonna come over there.
Can I justify my reticence towards fighting games? I feel like it's the UFO 50 thing, where it's like, I like the systems of fighting games, but I like them embedded into like a grand narrative adventure. It's very hard for me to.
Do I have a world tour for you to street fight your way through?
No, I know, dude, but there's something.
Do you know that? Let me tell you about a volcano, and we just keep throwing people into it.
There you go.
I have played some fighting games. There's just something about them where they're all boxed into like, here's a fight in an arena, and the connective tissue is not like interactive between them. That is hard for me to engage with. Does that make sense?
Jeremy needs there to be like a what film property, like a Tarkovsky fighting game.
Yeah, I need like the Stalker fighting game. I need a Solaris fighting game on a space
between
station.
Matches about like the importance of friendship. No.
Yeah, if it was like an Ozu movie and I was like trying to arrange a marriage for my daughter.
Every fight has a 15-minute long shot of just the environment. You're like, this is really pretty. And then it comes back, you're like, oh yeah, right, shit.
Is there a fighting game with like a sad old man and he like can't connect with his family? Because I can get into that. Okay. Yeah, okay. Maybe Tekken is the one.
Man, what's the I've just realized that Street Fighter 2's backgrounds sort of apply the Kurosawa logic of always having motion as well, right? They
that's true.
Had the chicken guy and the fucking.
There's always something going on, yeah.
There's always something going on. There's always something going on this podcast, but we're done for this week. That was episode 195. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to all of our incredible patrons. I think there's some other weirdness going on this month. I can't talk about other projects getting filmed, which will be out very, very soon. Just a stupidly short amount of time. You'll all be very excited about it. I'm sure next month we'll be able to explain what the fuck that is in due course. But after that, I think we're all just gonna edit for like 6 months because we have so many projects to get out. It's fucking ridiculous. I think there's like 12 in the edit queue at the moment, and some of them are real bangers. The one Jeremy's cutting at the moment, which I filmed in Europe a couple months back, is gonna be a big one. There's lots of really cool shit. So until next week, folks, enjoy your video games. We'll be back with more updates on UFO 50 then. Until then, bye.